Good morning. Assuming I remembered how to do everything properly, we should be recording and ready to do the webinar. A couple of administrative notes before I begin. Number one, you may hear a repetitive, indeed irritatingly repetitive, high-pitched squeaking at some point. That's because I have rescued a 6-month-old puppy from the San Diego Humane Society, and he has found a chew toy, a squeaky toy that he really, really likes. So he's over in the next room. If you hear that, please ignore it. I think for the most part, the noise reduction in Zoom, the noise cancellation thing they have, is actually pretty good. So you may not hear it at all. You may also not hear the fan that I have constantly running in the background. Normally I turn that off for the webinars, but it's going to be 105 degrees today. So the fan stays on. So hopefully it won't cause any excessive noise complaints. Good to be back after my vacation. We have a webinar today that is much more of a best practices webinar than a how-to webinar. We're going to be talking about versioning and how to implement versioning. This will also be one of the shorter webinars. There's no way that I can drag versioning out for 2 hours, and so I'm not going to try. With that said, let's share my screen and get into it. In Process Director, every object can be versioned and versioned independently. In fact, there's a couple of different types of versioning. There's at least one more other than the sort of official type of versioning that we normally think about, formal versioning. So I have an empty folder here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new application real fast. I'm just going to create it from a template. I'm going to use my little application stub. We'll just call this versioning, and we will create our application in a brand new folder, and we will pretend as if I have built this application from scratch. Now we have our versioning application. I probably should have called it something other than versioning, shouldn't I? Because now I'm 2 folders deep, both of which say versioning. But let's take a look at the form, because this is the first type of, well, the first type of versioning that I want to talk about is the automatic, we're going to save your changes type of versioning that is included in forms. When you open up a form, there are several tabs here. This is our versions tab. We'll talk a lot more about this a little bit later, but there is another tab here, this one that has the little watch thing or clock thing, which for some reason is going counterclockwise. I think I know what the counterclockwise watch dial means. I think it means that we're going back in time. So good choice for an icon. This is our history. Now, right now, there is no history. And indeed, if I was to create a form from scratch, there wouldn't be any history here on this tab at the moment at all. The reason that we do have a version history here is because I created this application from the template library. And so technically, this entire application that we're looking at was imported, and indeed was imported from another folder. Obviously, it resides in the template library folder. I have an application stub. If we turn on our system folders and we go into the template library, we can see that I have this application folder. This is where my base application is contained. And so what I've done is I've imported that application. If we go back up to our regular folder and I just create a new form definition real quick, we'll just call it new form. and we'll create it. And obviously, when you create a new form, it goes directly into the online form designer, which I don't particularly want to do at the moment. I want to go back here and I want to rewind here. Going to see something a little different. This is the first save of my form. So whenever we save the form, it creates a history. Now, this history is semi-persistent, and you can, in fact, and I can't see it here because of the size of it's sticking off at the bottom of the screen, but this is a drop down, and you can see right here where it says all. This actually gives you the ability to go to 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100 versions of this application. In fact, I didn't mean to maximize it. I'm trying to make it small enough so that we can see it. There we go. That's what we're supposed to see right there. So I can keep up to 100 versions of this. I believe 100 is the standard. Although no, all is the standard, which means it will keep. But I think that will max out at 100. If I'm remembering correctly, it maxes out as 100. I think that is the default in Process Director, although you can change this via a custom variable. I think the default is to maintain a list of 100. This is essentially a knowledge view, and I think that's the default built into the system is 100, although you can, as I said, via a custom variable, change the number of items that remain in that list. In any event, it has saved stuff. Now we'll go into the online form designer. So now I'll just drop a control or two on here. And in fact, I actually don't want to drop it on here. Let's go back to where we're going to be working, and let's just use that one. Let's forget about the new form. But as you can see, it saves. The one thing I wanted to show you, it saves every save. And so in this case, when I created the form, it did automatically save it. And so it gives me a version save date. So this is version 1. But again, this is history. This is not a real version of the application. It's useful in a couple of contexts, which we'll talk about in a second, but this just shows me my initial save. And while we're here, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that form, having created it. Let's go back into my versioning app, and we'll open that form. Okay, so this is what we saw initially, and we saw this line here, imported version from server. You are not going to see that whenever you create it from scratch, because obviously you're not importing it. But if you do create it from the template, that does count as an import. So as far as Process Director is concerned, this was imported from another server. We know that that's not really true, but Process Director doesn't, and it treats it like a normal import. So that's why we have this here, this imported version in our history. So now we can go into the form, and I've already got some objects here, but I'll add a couple of more controls. I don't really have to do anything too fancy here, and I will save and close the form. And we'll give it a second to save and close. And by the way, we're just going to come back in and add another couple of controls and save and close it again. So bear with me while we wait. Great, we've had that. And if we go back over here and look, we've got another version. Great. We'll go back into the online form designer, and I'll add another control somewhere. Oh, well, that's probably not a great place for a control, but we don't really care about form design at the moment. And I'll save once again. What I probably should have done is not save and close it. I should have just saved, although it would close automatically whenever we came over here. But notice as I make these saves, I have additions to the history. So every time I make a change to the form and every time I save it, another version, I hate to use the word version, but it's kind of a version, it gets saved. This is a save history type of versioning. Now, it is super convenient. As you just saw, I put a control in a place that I probably should not have put it. I don't like this controls placement. Obviously, I could go and manually move it, but for our purposes here today, if I've made some sort of implementation mistake, I have implemented myself into a dead end. Well, I've got a way to roll back to a previous save. So version 2 was when I added those 2 new controls to this form. So I am just going to roll back to this version. As you can see at the very top of the screen, I get a little warning message that asks me if I'm sure I want to do that. I am sure, and I am back to version 2. Now, an important thing to note here. Once I have rolled back to version 2, version 3 is gone. This is not really a version that I'm saving here. It is a save history. I mean, technically it is a version, but it doesn't save these versions. If I roll back to a previous version, I better be sure that I'm rolling back to the correct version. Now, in this case, I'm fairly sure that I have rolled back to the correct version. Indeed, I have. I'm back to my 2 new controls here. But because I have rolled back, that old history for version 3, that's gone. I can never access that version again. And indeed, if I come in here and say, well, fine, let's go to here and let's add another control, and we'll save and close this. And then we'll go back to the history tab. As soon as it saves anyway, we'll go back to the history tab. Okay, this is a little tedious. Well, we'll get this tedious stuff out of the way at the beginning. Then I go back and look at my history tab. I have a version 3 again, but you know what? These version numbers, their indexes, they're largely irrelevant. This is not a real version. If I roll back to a previous version, these changes are lost forever. Now, this is convenient in many cases because when I'm actually working on a form and I'm going back in and making changes and running the form and seeing it works, it is often super convenient to be able to go back to the version history and just say, oh, okay, I've made a horrible mistake. I need to roll back and get rid of the thing that I just did or the last 2 things I did. And as long as I know when I kind of made a change, I can sort of roll back to the last good version before that change. All of the changes that I've made in the interim since that rollback will all be gone. But this is, at least during the design phase, this is a really convenient tab to have to be able to go back and work your way out of some sort of, implementation dead end that you may have worked yourself into. That's the form itself. I can go ahead and save and close that. I can go to my my process timeline. Note there is no versioning tab here. So any change that are not, there is a versioning tab. There is no history tab here. There's no history tab for actually anything other than forms. Well, email templates obviously would have a history tab, but changes that I make here, I don't have a way of rolling back conveniently the way that I do on the form. Now, there's a good reason for having it on the form because this is probably where, 80% of all of your work is going to be done in a form or a email template. And it's convenient. And this is where this is most useful in terms of being able to go back and fix things that you may have done on the form. So it's nice to have this history. Keep in mind that while it is persistent, this is all fungible, and hitting that rollback button does mean that I'm going to get rid of a lot of previously done stuff. However, the nice thing about it is if I go back in, let's pick case management. I'm sure I've made some change. Well, I may not have made any changes to this actually. Let me go back and look at my auto claim form and look at its history. No, I just have the import. I did do one here though. Where is the one that I did for the webinar? Because I usually don't delete that until the next time I run that webinar. So I should have a form in here somewhere. So here's my facilities operations form. There we go. I can go back and even though I last touched this on 6/20/2024, so a couple of months ago at this point, I still have my saved histories and I can still roll back to any of those saved histories that I need. So as I made changes and updates, it kept a running history. But again, remember down here at the very bottom, I'm probably only going to be able to go back 100 times. Now you would think that 100 previous versions would be plenty. However, every time you hit save, it's going to save a version. So if you're one of those people like me, whenever I'm actually building something, I kind of have a tendency when I am building something for real of going into my form. And when I'm in the online form designer, going clicky on the save button to save my interim progress, which is fine. You can certainly do that, but that clicky save means I'm going to add a new version. So I can go in for, maybe 3 or 4 hours and be making little interim saves here and there, and that's perfectly fine. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that. But just remember that once you do that, you go back over to your history, these versions that you're adding every time you hit that save button count against your 100. So you can go through 100 rows here pretty quickly. For some of you, you might think 100 is too many and you may only want to save, a smaller number of versions. As we saw earlier, I'm not going to resize everything. You can save as few as one previous version. Wouldn't recommend that, but you can certainly do it. This is kind of an informal version. It works on forms. It's super convenient, especially during implementation, to be able to go and roll back out of a mistake. But this is not really formal versioning, even though it does stick around. And it is a fallback for the form anyway, not for anything else, which is its downfall, but for the form anyway, it is at least a fallback that you can look at if you've made some sort of horrible mistake on a form and you don't realize it and you didn't version the previous version of the form formally. Well, you can always go back and at least for the form, roll back to it from the history tab on the form itself. For every other object, the history tab doesn't exist. And all we're left with is this, the versions tab. Every object in Process Director can be versioned, and they can all be versioned independently. That is not the way that we would recommend that you create a version, although you certainly can. If I just wanted to version this form, I could just call it V1 and say this is the initial version. And I can click create new version. And now it has created a snapshot of just this form. Well, great. This is now permanent. I can apply this version at any time. Anytime I need to, I have an apply this version. Now, unlike the history tab, this is not a rollback. It's literally applying the version itself. And so I can have multiple versions. I can have V2. So let me just create a couple of versions just to create them. And V3. And presumably in the real world, these would all be separate versions that all do different things. And if for whatever reason, V3 was a problem and I needed to go back to V2, all I have to do is click apply this version. I'm going to get a confirmation dialog box that asks if I'm sure that I really want to do this. But when I hit proceed, it will go ahead and basically do what is essentially a re-import of that saved version. It will show me an import report, tells me it's applying that version, and I hit close here. And now I am running in version 2 of this form. At the very top of the versioning tab, it tells me what's going on with this form. It tells me what version I have applied, when I applied it, and when the form was last saved, which obviously in our case is going to be exactly the same time because all I've done is create versions. I haven't made any changes to this form. So when I created the version, obviously it saves the form, and that's my last save. So I know what version I'm on simply by going to the versions tab. Now, keep in mind, this versioning can be confusing. I have 3 versions. My latest version was at, 49 seconds after 9:19. So that technically is my newest version, but not the version that I'm running. I'm running version 2. So it is important to, whenever you go to the versions tab, first thing you should do, especially if you have multiple versions like I have, first thing you should do, and you will save yourself trouble. Trust me, if you do that, read this at the top of the screen. That tells you what is going on with that form. In fact, there have been cases when people have made a new version and for whatever reason have, and I don't know how you do this mistakenly, but they have said, hey, something is wrong with our form. All of our new stuff is gone and we don't understand it. And you go back in and you look, and at some point, nothing makes sense. And you just go to the versions tab while you're troubleshooting and you go, oh, and you can then apply the appropriate version. And magically, all of their new controls come back and are returned to the form. And they're like, well, we don't have no idea how that happened. Well, I don't know how it happened either, other than clicking apply this version and reapplying the version. I think in that case, there was a slight error in version 3. So they just wanted to go back to version 2 and fix it. And so they reapplied the old version, and then they went back in to fix it, and they didn't see what they thought they were gonna see, because those controls didn't exist in version 2. So they were super confused. If I am remembering quite, it's been a couple of years, about how versions work, which is another important point. If I have placed brand new controls and I have new functionality in version 3 and something is broken, the best thing to do is to go back to your dev server, whatever that problem is, fix it and re-import it immediately, and then you can reversion it as version 4. If you're not going to be working directly on the server, I suppose, and you have a version 2 that works, I suppose it would be fine as long as we're not going to do any development on these particular objects. I suppose it would be fine to go ahead and say, well, let's just go back to the previous version of the form. And you can roll back to that previous version of the form. That's not going to be a problem, because once you go back to that previous version of the form, your end users will see the working version, and you can keep that running in the interim while you fix the new version on your dev server and re-import it. I want to demonstrate how imports work with versions, but let's not do that yet. Let's do the entire project. Which reminds me, if we're going to do the entire project, where we really need to apply the versions is not on these individual objects. Now, this is not a 100% hard and fast rules. I can think of several scenarios where I might version these objects here, the form or the process timeline, or I might version them differently from the application. That is certainly possible to do, and there may be a couple of circumstances in which you might want to do that. In general, as a rule of thumb, that is not what you want to do. It's super tedious if I have 5 or 10 objects, 20 objects inside my application. It's super tedious to version them all independently. It's also probably not the best idea, because a change to the form or a change to the process timeline is really a change to the entire application. So your best practice to version is not to version at the individual form level. Irrespective of how many changes you might make or how many versions you need to generate, the best thing to do would be to go to the parent folder that contains your application. I hammer on this all the time. There's a reason I hammer on this all the time, what I'm about to say, because I've seen some of your installations, and I have seen process timeline folders with like 100 process timelines, and then a forms folder with 100 forms, and then a business rules folder with 300 business rules. That's not the most efficient way to organize your process director installation. It is certainly not the most efficient way of versioning things. I mean, if that is your setup, where I have, let's say I have 10 different applications, each of which has their own form and their own process timeline. If I create a forms folder and put the 10 forms in there, and a process timelines folder and put 10 process timelines in there, I'm making my life much harder than it needs to be. Imports now become more tedious to work properly or to get to import properly, because I might make a change in both my form and my process timeline, but because they're in separate folders, I've now got to import them one at a time. And so I import the form, the import fails because it's looking for something in the existing process timeline that is not there. So then I have to import the new process timeline. Okay, great. It probably fails because something in the form is now broken because the form failed. But I've got the process timeline in there. So now I'm going to re-import the form. On the second time, it'll probably come in. Then I can re-import the process timeline, and it'll probably come in fine on the second time. I'm doing 4 separate import operations to bring in one application. The best practice, and the one that BP Logic strongly recommends, is that every application go into its own parent folder that contains all of the objects that are contained in that application, so that I can import and export them all as one. Oh, and by the way, I can version these objects all as one, because just as this makes your import process, this method of organization makes your import process 10 times easier, 1,000 times easier in some cases, it also makes versioning easier, because I don't have to version each of these individual objects now. All I have to do is go into the properties of my parent folder, go to its versions tab, and version this folder. Versioning this folder gives me a snapshot of everything that is in the folder. So this is where I would need to create my version. So once I've created my application, I can now go in, call this V1. Oh, I forgot to put in a description. Oh, well, too late now. So I've got, here's my label, V1. This is when it was saved. That's my version number. I am good to go. If I download this, it is going to download, let's save as. It's going to download versioning v1.xml. This is going to download an XML file. I guess we should go into my downloads folder so that we can see it. This is going to download my XML file. As you can see, it's 912 kilobytes. It's got everything I need. Technically, I could take this version and I can import it into another process director server because it's a process director XML file. Most of the time, when you export a process director application, as we'll be doing here in a couple of minutes, most of the time when you do that export, The file format is PDZ. The PDZ file format is literally just a zip file that we have put our own file extension on. And that's all it is. You can import that PDZ file into Process Director. Process Director will extract all of the contents of that PDZ file. Those contents are generally a single XML file, and it will import that. The PDZ file format is actually relatively new. We didn't actually have it prior to 5.2, 5.3, somewhere in there. Maybe it was one of the later 4 versions. I don't remember exactly. But historically in Process Director, all exports of all Process Director objects were just plain old XML files. And so you just export, you'd go to, export an application or a form or process timeline or whatever. And the file format was actually XML. So it actually exported the full XML file as just a raw XML text file. Those text files could be, pretty big. You could also have it export as a zip file where it would take that XML file and it would zip it into a zip archive and you would download the zip file. That was a lot more convenient because text files can be compressed quite a lot. But the reason why we're seeing this XML file there, that's just an artifact. Actually, every export that you make in Process Director fundamentally is an XML file. Process Director is database based. And so XML is a great language for specifying the actual data structure of the form. The form is not a physical object, right? The form is really just a database object. There are some XML that gets saved or some HTML that gets saved in the online form designer. But in general, all of your fields, all of that stuff, those are all data fields. That's all actually just database information. So while there is an HTML piece that determines how your form will look, all of the actual data and everything else is saved in the Process Director database. And what you're doing whenever you do an export, and indeed, whenever you're saving a version, is you're actually just taking all of this information from the Process Director database, organizing it into an XML file, and essentially you're saving that XML file because that XML file defines in detail the data structure of that form or process timeline or whatever object it may be, or in this case, the entire folder. As you can see, 912 kilobytes. That's a big text file because it contains all of the objects in the folder as an XML file. So technically, I could take this XML file and I could just import it into another Process Director server. Indeed, one of the things that I could do if I really wanted to, and I wanted to be super, super safe, is I can take this XML file and I can say, you know what? I want to keep an archive. Sure, it's great that I've got this archive in Process Director, but what I might want to do is just go in here and say, hey, I want to upload a file to my Process Director server, and I just want to grab that XML file. And as you can see, here it is. That's how long it's been around. It still says Workflow Director in the XML if you're looking at the preview pane. But I can take this XML file and I can just pop it in and upload it to Process Director. And now I've got this XML file just sitting there as a separate version that now exists in my content list. I'm not sure why I would put it in the content list. If your fear is that something bad may happen on the database where you would lose your actual object definitions, it's probably best if you store this XML file somewhere that's not in Process Director where it gets stored in the same database you're afraid of losing. So you may want to create some sort of archive with these XML files so that if necessary, if you wanted to, you could just simply re-import that XML file into Process Director. Now, I should point out that download button, and let's delete this file since I have no interest in keeping it. When we go here and we see this download button, that's going to give me my XML file. That is not true for some other objects. This download button has a couple of different things that might happen. For example, if we go back into the form, which I've already versioned, and I hit the download on this form. Wait, is this the one? No, it's not here. Sorry. Let's go back up here. This is the one. This is the download that's tricky, I believe. So when I hit this, this is not downloading an XML file. Now, this is an artifact of Process Director. Let's go ahead and hit save here for this download. And notice this is versioning form HTM. This is actually the HTML version of my template. Quite frankly, this is useless. There's nothing you're going to be able to do with this, except perhaps one thing that you might do if you save this HTML file. If you open it in a text editor, copy its entire contents, open the form, go to the source code editor, and paste all of those contents in, I suppose it's possible that I can recreate the form doing that. That's a long way around the horn. I can't think of a situation where that would be the preferred option. And if you don't know HTML, you don't really know what the effect is going to be. But prior to the online form designer and prior to Microsoft deciding that, ActiveX was worthless and they would just abandon the technology, which they do all the time and which makes them a delightful technology partner to work with. In the older versions of Process Director, prior to the OFD, Microsoft Word was the form editor. And all forms were created basically as Word documents that you uploaded to the form definition to create your form template. And at the time, what this download button did was it downloaded the original Word document for that version. Now, back in those days, we had a plugin that was installed into Microsoft Word, and the plugin contained all of the possible form controls that are available in Process Director. So all of your form design at that time was done in Microsoft Word. Obviously, in 2016, when Microsoft Word decided ActiveX wasn't worth maintaining anymore, they were going to kill, and in fact did kill, Internet Explorer. There were some cool things that you could do. You could do round-trip editing of your form right from the form definition. There's no reason to be nostalgic about that. That technology is dead as fried chicken. We're never going back to it. We're now stuck with doing everything in HTML, which is easier in some senses, but we did lose one thing, which is the ability to download in a readable, editable format the original Word document that was used to create the form. So if you're still on version, 4 dot whatever of Process Director, and you still have Word forms, how you're making that work, I have no earthly idea. Then when you hit download, you're actually pulling down the Word form. For the online form designer, this is just not super useful. All it's giving you is the raw HTML of your form template, which is okay, I guess, if you know what it means. Most people don't. And I've been a web developer since the 90s. Opening this up is worse than being stabbed, as far as I'm concerned. Here's an embedded section control. Oh, great. It's got JSON stuff. It's got a whole bunch of stuff in it that just gets thrown into that HTML. I don't really know what it means. In some sense, despite the several faults that it had, the Word designer was a lot easier to use. But again, that's dead. So this is what we're stuck with. And because we're stuck with this now, on the history link, this download link is, well, honestly, it's largely worthless because, I guess if you want the HTML, you can have it and we'll give it to you. I mean, that is your form template. And technically you could take that form template and as I said earlier, you can just copy the HTML and just paste over whatever the HTML is in a particular form. But it's super tedious. In most cases, the only real button that matters on the history is the rollback. But for the versions, we live in a slightly different world. And I do want to go back up here to my folder. And the world we live in versioning is that the download button downloads XML for us, which is importable. The versioning on forms does the same thing. It downloads the XML for that form. You'd have to be very cautious with that because you would now be importing just the form itself, not the entire application. So if there was some change to the form that affected the process timeline or vice versa, your import might fail. Whereas if we are here at the folder level, I don't really have to worry about my import failing all of that much. Now, it is possible that my import might fail because items do have to be imported from development to production in a certain order. So let's say I created some metadata that I wanted to apply to my form and process timeline. That metadata exists on the dev server, but if it doesn't exist on the production server, even if I am being a good little implementer and am versioning and importing my entire parent folder all at one time, well, the metadata doesn't exist on the server. Metadata in the hierarchy of things that exist is at a higher level in the hierarchy than the application itself. If that higher level object is missing, then when you try to import the application, well, it's just going to fail out because it's going to tell you that that metadata doesn't exist. So there can still be import failures, but in general, import failures by folder level fail largely because you as the developer have failed to respect the appropriate import order. And so you're missing a higher level object like some metadata or a business value that should exist or a business rule that should exist in your global folders. So as you can see here, I've got, drop down objects, business rules, business values. If those objects don't exist on the production system because you didn't import them prior to importing the application, obviously your application import will fail or at the very least receive warnings. But assuming that you've done that correctly, and that's not a concern, if I was just pulling this application in, for example, it's not a concern on this particular application, then importing the entire application at the same time enables me to largely avoid import errors as I'm going from one system to another. Every time that you do an import, very first thing you need to do is make a version. So I've got this version here, version 1. We're going to pretend this is my dev server. And so I've got a version 2 that I did a little work on, and then I did some more work and made a couple little changes. So I'm going to make a V3 here. And I don't know why I'm capitalizing the V for the version today, but I keep doing it. But okay, here we go. I've got my V3. So I've got 3 versions here. I'm pretty happy with it. It's time for me to export it. So we're going to go back to our content list and we're going to go ahead and export this application. I actually had an application that I saved for import. It's right there, import.pdz, that I actually don't want to use because it's going to be a lot easier to follow, I think, if we use the same app all the way through. So there we go. I've got my versioning.pdz file there. It now exists in my downloads folder. Downloads. There it is. There's my versioning file. In fact, let's get rid of these 2 files so I don't get confused, because I am easily confused. So I've got my versioning PDZ file. Let's open up my production server, or in my case, at least a different server. I want documentation, and we'll pop over to documentation. I'll log in as me. And oh, I forgot I did that. By the way, multi-factor authentication is coming to Process Director for built-in accounts very soon. So hold on, I got to open up Authy. I got to find that server, and I got to put in what my current token is, which in this minute is 14808. Oh, of course. Why would I have been typing it? Why? 148081. I have 7 seconds. Well, I have 37 seconds, but well, actually, I don't know that I have 37 seconds. Not entirely sure that they've implemented the grace period yet. But anyway, there we go. Now I'm logged into my other server using multi-factor authentication. So let's open the content list here, and we'll go into the documentation partition. Probably should have gone down here too. Oh, I don't actually know. Okay, training. That's where I want to put it. So we'll go to create new, and we will import our objects. We will browse, and there's our versioning.pdz, and we'll hit OK, and we'll begin importing our objects. Look at that. Nice, clean import, because everything comes in all at one time because everything is in the same folder. Okay, great. Let's go to the versioning tab for this folder. It's empty. It wasn't empty a minute ago. A minute ago, for that folder, we had 3 versions. Indeed, we still do have 3 versions. When we imported it onto this server, that all went away. We have no versions. So I've imported this onto the server. And now that I've imported it, I need to put a label on it. But we're going to call this version the initial import. First import from dev for new app. And we'll create that version. So on each server, I'm going to have separately versioned iterations of this application. Versions do not import or export. When I export, it's going to export whatever the current version is. So on this particular server, it is, it's version 1. That is the most recently applied version. So this is the version that got exported, this version 1, because it was the most recently applied version. This is the version that is going to be saved with this particular application. Not sure how I did that, but here we are. Doesn't matter. There's no difference in the applications anyway, so I don't care. But I've now got my initial import on the other system, and now I can begin versioning it separately. The second that I get that import out of dev and I import it into this, which I guess is technically for today, at least my production server, I need to version this folder immediately so that I have a complete snapshot of this folder. And indeed, every time I do an import, I need to do a new version of the application. So I have my snapshot created. I'm in version 1. Generally, you wouldn't do this, but I'm going to just create a V2 just for general purposes. And now I've got a version 2 of this server. So we're going to hit OK. We're going to save that. We're going to go back to my production server. And I'm going to create a new version here. So we'll go with V4. We'll create a new version. There's my version. And we'll ensure that we apply V4 there. Great. So V4 is now officially applied. Not sure what happened there. I apparently changed profiles for some reason. We'll go back to my versioning app, and this time I'm going to export it. And we'll call it versioning 2 so that I can tell which one I'm exporting. We certainly want to save it. So we'll save our XML file. Great. I should now have a versioning 2 in my downloads folder. We'll go back to my quote unquote production server. We're going to do another import objects. We're going to browse and we will import versioning2.pdz. Now, versioning 2 contains all of the same objects. So it's going to overwrite our initial folder and all of its contents with the new stuff. So we'll go into our versioning folder. We'll go to properties and we'll look, and we still have this version. It's not the same version. We have the old version 2 showing up in our versions list. So I really do, at this point, need to make a V3 so that there's a difference. Obviously, I should have put in something about this is a, here, we'll do a V4. Do not use V3. It's bad. So I've done something wrong in version 3. I've now done an import, and object version descriptions are important. Now it says don't use V3. This is not going to stop me if I actually want to click on V3, however. If I want to keep V3, I need to do whatever I can to try to get people from using it. Although, while this is the most complete version history of this document, I've now declared that this is a bad version. I don't want people to use that version. If I don't want people to use this version, maybe this, creating a new version and then adding a note that just says, do not use V3, probably not the best practice. At this point, what I probably need to do is just delete V3. And I'll get my warning that asks if I really want to delete it, but now it's gone. Now I can't roll back to that version. In general, we don't recommend in the normal run of events that you delete a version, but this is a case where I've done something, I thought it would be cool. And who knows, maybe it worked fine in the dev server. That's not an entirely unknown problem. The dev server has different permissions usually. Different users have the ability to access and use the dev server. We tend to sort of administer everything as an administrator when we're on a dev server, not as an end user, which, by the way, is also a bad practice. You really should be testing as an end user. Indeed, you should have a testing stage that you run through with real users who can go through and poke your application with a sharp stick a bunch of times to see what breaks. But it's not unknown for you to have something, it looks super great to you as an administrator, and then you put it on to production and it fails. There are a number of reasons why something might fail on production that has nothing to do with some horrible mistake that you've made. For example, you might include a knowledge view that returns form instances. and the permissions on your production server, nobody has view permissions for those form instances, so that whenever you run a knowledge view doesn't show the user anything because they're end users and they don't have permissions, but you're an admin, so you see the knowledge view and it looks like it works great. But that's not an application problem. That's a configuration problem or a permissions problem on your server, which you can fix simply by just going to that form definition, adding view children properties to it, and then replicating those permissions down to all the instances. Ta-da, problem solved. I can run the knowledge view as an end user and see everything. If I've made a fundamental mistake in the application itself, that is probably a good reason for deciding, okay, I need to delete, as we did here, version 3, because I've done something on that server that doesn't match how the production server works. And so I need to delete that. It could be a permissions problem, but the type of permissions problem where you just don't want to give users access to certain objects, and you didn't think about that whenever you were designing it. I mean, this kind of stuff happens all the time. So in general, we keep all of the versions, but occasionally it is not a violation of internal consistency and philosophical righteousness to delete a version if it is a bad version. The import thing, though, does make this tricky, and you do need to keep notes. Now, I didn't keep a note here. That's my fault. I tend to cowboy my way through this real quickly, especially as I'm talking. These descriptions are super important. So in this particular case, version 2 is a completely different import of this particular application. It may not look the same. It may not work the same. I mean, the two might be wildly different. Version 4 might be, much more complicated. The converse may be true. I have on occasion built things that are too complicated or more complicated than needed, and that benefited from a significant amount of simplification when I discovered how users were actually, wanting to use the thing. Both of those things are possible. You need to keep a note about this is a separate import. In fact, it might be wise to have consistency across the board in terms of how you're going to do an import. So again, let's get rid of these, and let's get rid of these. In fact, let's get rid of this one. Here is how I might keep a description running that makes sense. So we're going to create a new version. We're going to call this V1 is so generic. I'll just call it 20. Well, I don't want to make up a we'll call this initial import. And then I'm going to want to keep a little more extensive notes about this. Some of this stuff I don't need to keep because it's going to sort of tell me when, like the version date, but imported on 2024-09-05, I guess, according to my watch. This is, let's click on dev and see what its version number is. So let me go back to versioning. Let me go into this versioning folder. Let me go to the versions tab of this folder and its properties. Okay, V4. So I will say that this version is saved as version V4 on dev. I like to put dev in capital letters. So now I have a link between, okay, remember, these are all going to be separate. There's no guarantee that the version numbers are going to match version to version. So on my production server, taking more verbose notes, like saying, hey, what version is this on dev? And so if I go back on dev, I can see that my most recent version on dev, which I think is the one that I downloaded and imported, was version 4. So this version is saved as, there should be an S there, as version v4 on dev. It's the initial version available to end users on prod. Now I can create that. There's probably a couple of other things I might want to put in there, but you don't want to sit here and watch me type all day. But being able to look at the notes, it's not as important on dev as it is on prod, because on dev, we're going to assume that as you go and do things, you're going to keep a larger number of dev versions as basically interim versions of the application on dev. You may or may not ever need to roll back to them, but your difference in dev and production will probably, and while I won't state this as a rule, but as a recommendation, should probably have more versions than you have on prod. I should only have versions on prod that I create immediately after I do the application import. That should be the only time I ever need to have a version on prod. Do you know why? Because I'm never going to manually make any implementation changes on prod, because that's not where we make implementation changes. When I'm on the production server, the only versions I should have and the only changes that should be made to the application itself should be via imports from dev. I understand the urgency that you may feel when something goes wrong to go to your production server and say, okay, well, what I really need to do is add this extra form field here, or I need to change the due date on this process timeline, whatever it may be. And then I'll just create a new version and I'll just note the new version. Oh, wow. We'll call this version TL change. And we'll just say that I changed the due date on a timeline activity. And there we go. It's okay, fine. I made the change. I changed the due date on a timeline activity. Now I've got a version 2. The timeline activity works the way that I want it to work. This is worse than being stabbed, because there is an excellent chance that having made this change on production, you will not, in fact, because you got an important email or you had to run off to a meeting and it kind of slipped your mind. There's no version here where I've changed the due date on that process timeline. So the next time I export this application, I am now going to overwrite this version with a new application, and it's going to revert back to what is essentially the initial import, because I'm trying to track different implementation activities on two different servers. That is an absolutely horrible idea. If I have to make this timeline change, this ain't the way we're going to do it. What we're going to need to do is we are going to need to go back to the dev server, and we'll have to, make that timeline change here. New TL activity due date. Great. Now I know what I've changed on this version. And by the way, this is probably the kind of note that you need to have on the development versions that you create. Nobody's trying to limit what you can say in your notes. You can say a lot. And so maybe some sort of list of the changes that you have made, so that, and I'm not saying you have to, keep a detailed change log here. If you need to keep a detailed change log, there are probably better, more efficient ways to do that. but you should at least have some indication of what the difference is between this TL change fee. Let's replace that. This TL change version, so that I can say I put in a new activity due date, added new notification. So it's going to send a different email than it used to send. Maybe just a brief list of what the changes are. I don't need to spell notification, the browser can. And then I can create that new version. And so what my comments would tend to be on my development system are, at the very least, a brief note of the changes that were made that required you to create version number 5. And of course, at this point, now that I've created this new version, this version number 5, I can export it. I probably shouldn't have given it that name, but versioning 1 in parentheses will probably work for me. So now I can go back here and go back to training and import my objects one more time. Where is import objects? That's alphabeting is hard. Oh, that's not the way it's supposed to work. Did I not save the... Oh, save as. Okay, fine. We'll call it... I think it's version 5, right? That it is in production. I think I have 5 versions. So we'll call it version 5. And now we can go back over here and we can browse again. I should have version 5 there. I can import it. My import is successful. And the first thing I want to do is go into this folder, go into the properties, go to the versioning tab. And now I would just say 2024-09-05. That's, I've arbitrarily decided those are my versions now. This is V5 from dev. And if you use the version number as your, or the date time group as your label, then fine. I now know this is version 5 from dev. I can import it. And now I'm starting to build a versioning history because I want a version after every import, but now I can actually attach, by keeping notes properly here, I can attach what my production version is, of which I have 2, as opposed to what my dev version is, of which I have 5 technically. So that should be the way that the change process works. We're going to want to change here. And just as I create a new version, every time I import into my production system, and that should be immediate, I import the folder, go into the folder, immediately version it. I want a nice, crisp, clean version of that import so that if I have to roll back to a previous one or whatever, I can always do that via the apply this version link. Similarly, on your dev server, before you export it, you should do what we just did a second ago. Make a new version on dev that, again, shows what changes you made. Once you've made that change and you have that version running, that's the version that you can export out of Process Director and into, or out of development and into production in Process Director. So you're actually going to be doing a lot of versioning. On dev, you should be versioning every time you make a major change or a major set of change. Usually you have some sort of change request process, and every time you complete a change request, you should probably version it. And those versions that you create, ultimately you should create one immediately before export. You export, you go to your production server, you import, and then you immediately version on the production server as well. And by keeping notes properly and being able to pick, okay, this is the version on dev, this is that version on dev, I now have, even though there's no, obviously formal link for two, unconnected servers, I at least now have textually some sort of idea of what happened when, what got imported, how it got imported, what it relates to on the dev server. So I have some idea of their relationship. It's a little tedious to have to go through, but maintaining versioning properly is super important. And by the way, this is a little confusing. I don't like it. I don't like the way it works. This is misleading here. And so I do like to fix this manually, and you kind of have to. Most recently applied version is 4. That does not mean the version that is currently running on the system is version 4. It's not. I made changes. I saved those changes. They didn't magically disappear. I'm running version 5 on this server. What this means is this is the version that was most recently manually applied to this object. Doesn't mean it's the version that's running now. Just means, hey, somebody applied this version on this date. Now, that may be the right version. It may not be the right version. I mean, I haven't saved this folder. See if I update it, if that updates it. Yeah, it does. So this is when my folder was last saved. So there's always going to be a delta, or you know what? There may not always be a delta because we don't often save folders. That is true. However, if there is a delta between these two numbers, that's a pretty good cue that this may not be the version that's actually running here. And look, if I see a version 5 here, this is where it gets super confusing. I am actually in version 5. Version 5 is the current running version. But if you look up at the top, that doesn't appear to be what it's telling you. What it appears to be telling you is that version 4 is the most recently applied version. That's true in the sense that the last time I manually applied version, that was the version I applied. It does not mean this is the version that's running. You're going to confuse yourself here. So we're just going to manually apply version 5. It's not going to hurt anything to do that. But it is going to, well, it's clearly going to kick me out of the content list for whatever reason. But now that I go back to my versioning folder, now the most recently applied version is version 5. So when you make a new version, to avoid confusion, because this does get confusing if you don't know exactly what it means, just go ahead and apply the new version. Now I'm on version 5. It says version 5 is the most recently applied new version. Look, my numbers are even the same on my date and timey bits. They're exactly the same. Great. This will reduce confusion. I'm now running in version 5. It's not necessary to do this, by the way. It's just that the way this reads is misleading. All it means is when it says the most recently applied version, all it means is that somebody came in and applied a previous version at one point. Doesn't mean it's the currently applied version. If I've made changes and I've made a new version, those changes are still there. The new version now exists, but this does not update because I didn't manually apply this version. It literally doesn't update unless I click this button. So confusing, don't like it. So the easiest way to avoid that confusion is just to apply this version. Look, if you are in an organization where like you and maybe one other person does all the development, it's probably not that big of a deal. Some customers, however, have a fairly large number of citizen developers that actually build their applications for them. And some people have teams of, I mean, we have a partner that we're currently having an argument with them on because they want to have like 25 people available to submit tech support tickets from their organization. That's a lot of people. And all of them are doing, their own sort of implementation work. When you have, like in that case, when you have 25 people who are working in Process Director, minor confusing things like this are best avoided. And the best way to avoid this minor confusing thing is just to apply version 5 so that the current version appears to be the version that's applied. All right, well, it is 11:16. As I said, this is a relatively short presentation today because there's not a lot to versioning, although I'm kind of surprised I got through an hour and 15 minutes talking about it. But there are a lot of best practices that are associated with it that require some extra discussion. Have a great week. I will look forward to seeing you on either Tuesday on the Feature Spotlight webinar, a small portion of which you saw previously when I had to use MFA to log into Process Director on my production server. So Tuesday, Feature Spotlight webinar. Otherwise, I'll see you on next Thursday for the next training webinar. Talk to you then. So long.